South Africans are very often forced to play chicken with their medical insurance. South Africans often try to convince themselves that they can go without, but the moment a medical emergency hits, their personal finances are, of course, often ruined. And now, as you get older, the risks increase. Let's take a look at what you should be doing when considering this instance. Joining us for this, Jessica Hubbard, a journalist at Finweek and Dinash Pillay, Metropolitan Single Premium Specialist. Thanks for joining us today. So, Dinesh, what do you typically find when it comes to medical insurance? Are people cutting back? Do they realize the importance of it? What are the overall themes that we're seeing right now?
People really realize this quite late in life, when they retire, and they basically have to then cut back because it's too expensive, and it becomes an affordability issue.
Yeah. So of course, as you say, they realize too late in life, when it is too late. So perhaps let's break it down by age group. If you're in the 20 to 30 age group, we'll start with that. What type of medical insurance should people be looking at in that age group?
Okay, basically a comprehensive, any specific client has to have a comprehensive medical scheme in place to cover you for any risks under medical circumstances. And you'll find that when you're young, you don't really use much of your medical aid. However, there's certain circumstances where you would. But as you get older, you'll find that you're more dependent on medical aid because of certain diseases and stuff that affects us on a day-to-day basis. In terms of funding, medical aid does become quite expensive. If you look at a 3-year average inflation rate, which is 5.5%, and you look at medical aid inflation increasing by 10.9%, there really is a huge gap there.
Some people obviously try and cut back on the expenses by going with a hospital plan, for example. Would you recommend schemes like that, which are probably less comprehensive in their coverage?
What I find is when people retire, they normally do cut back to hospital plans because medical aids are quite expensive. When you're in retirement, you find that there's already an income gap between pension and salary. And now when you have an income gap between pension and salary and your medical aid medical aid contributions is not differed or decreased, which will never happen, that's when you find...
so they're often cutting back just when they shouldn't be?
Exactly, that's when they're the highest risk where they will need a medical aid more important.
Yeah, Dinesh, maybe I'm jumping in here, but one of the hot debates that we have around a briar is guys say, well, instead of putting to the medical aid, let's just stick it into Satrix 40, and it's kind of our forced saving, and when something comes along, I'll have something to be able to fall back on. And the argument is that basically a Satrix is a kind of a growing investment, whereas a medical aid is essentially not throwing money away, but it's not perceived to be a growing investment. And I understand that argument, but the flip side of that is you get one thing wrong. You're in a car accident. You have to save quite aggressively in your 20s to be able to have 150,000 rand simply to get you admitted to hospital after a serious accident.
Very true. Any small procedure, medical procedure, is quite expensive, and most medical aids do not cover the full expense of a medical aid of a medical procedure. So it's difficult for clients out there. We have to be prepared for this type of risk, and where it comes into where we come into the picture is where we have to assist clients to choose a plan, put a plan in place where they can save additional funds just to cover the shortfalls.
I see one of the stats that comes out is 84% of South Africans roughly have no form of medical aid or medical insurance. Fair stat?
Yes, that's very true. People are expecting that NHI will come in and solve those problems for us. And it seemed to be going into a positive direction, and we all pray that it works for us.
I think one of the things that people get cynical about is they look at a medical aid and they feel like, and you'll work out, the accusation is you get movie tickets, free flights and all those fine things that are there, but your actual benefits, for instance, occupational therapy or one of those softer things that you wouldn't always perceive as medical related, mainstream medical related, your benefits seem to be declining year on year, and I don't know if that's just a perception or if it's a real issue that's facing South African medical policyholders.
Yes, that's very true. It is a real issue in South Africa. With medical aids, every year you get a benefit, your benefit document telling you what your benefits are going to be for next year, and you realize it's not going to cover what you need, and immediately people will go into a panic mode to understand what are they going to do. But your premiums have not come down. Your premiums basically increase much faster.
So is a medical aid something we should be reviewing and looking at each year? So it's not something you buy and sit on. You keep looking at it and comparing it to what you need and what it's offering.
Any financial plan, when you're looking at planning, you don't just sit back and you hold a plan and you expect to have it for 10 years. You've got to review it every year. You need to review whether it's still going to work for you. If you are married and you have kids, you need to look at the circumstances around that part as well. And the sad part is you'll find that some people are cutting back. When you look at cutting back, you'll find one member will stay on the medical aid because you'll find that you'll assume that person's more at risk, and then you'll find the opposite will happen, and then you're not covered for certain
But
things.
what about people, we talked about this hospital plan, which is very entry level and basic. When is that appropriate? Because of course you do get the benefits which are top-ups, but then some argue that ultimately you're always paying for those benefits, it's just the timing of those payments.
The most expensive part of medical costs is your hospitalization. And the hospital plan will cover your costs in hospitalization. However, there's certain other costs that are not going to be covered, so you can never be prepared.
So run through some of those, specifically from Metropolitan's perspective.
Okay, from our perspective, when we do a financial plan for a client, we would look at certain products that the client would use in order to have additional savings for a medical plan. Maybe a second retirement annuity, a unit trust portfolio that will be able to fund some of this, the medical expenses. But in specifically, we have a hospital cash plan where clients, if they do get hospitalized, they get certain cash paid to them, which will help them to cover certain parts of the cost. But in general, it's not going to cover all the costs. So that they're still going to have those circumstances there. So planning is really.
You sound almost quite sympathetic toward a consumer at the moment. I mean, I suppose you almost represent the industry, but I mean, you do sound sympathetic to a consumer, and I think this is a problem that South Africans have, is they feel like it's a product that's just been chucked at them. The value is decreasing year on year. I mean, can we actually have a positive outlook? And are there good products out there, and what are we looking for in terms of good product?
Okay, a comprehensive medical aid, you got to shop around and make sure that it meets your specific need. And you need to first do an analysis of what you need before you then choose a medical aid.
And surely how much budget you have.
Exactly. Affordability is very important. And not every plan is going to suit every client. So a client will have to do a full needs analysis to look at the aspects. You look at health planning, investment planning, and all those other stuff. And the risk is with your health planning, where most of the cost is people are still take loans to cover procedures. Even though you have a medical aid.
Yep. And I think one of the other things that's concerning people is sort of the age makeup of the mainstream medical schemes. Is there seems to be a lot of there are fewer young members coming on, and there's quite a lot of a lot of them become quite old age or top heavy. I mean, how do you assess that from an outsider's perspective?
Oh, that's quite a difficult picture to look at because the circumstances says that the younger members will then fund the older members, and I don't know how true is that because we both facing equal risk in terms of circumstances of what can face us in terms of medical procedures or any diseases that could come into effect, and you can never just plan 100% properly for it. You just got to be prepared that if any risk comes to effect, you got to be have some sort of cash fund to help you take care of that circumstances.
And what about the tax benefits? Because there are tangible benefits, I suppose, when you're younger. There are tangible benefits if you're not using the emergency aspect of the medical aid.
If you look at medical aids at the moment, and with the Tax Act has basically moved the goalpost further. People cannot just claim huge tax benefits because of medical aid premiums, and SARS has come down quite circumstantially regarding that matter.
What do you think about this idea of products seem to be becoming more and more integrated, for want of a better word, but there seems to be a medical thing, then there's a bit of retirement and a little bit of a top up, and there seems to be the products are almost trying to justify their increases, the medical insurance side of it, medical inflation side of it, but under this guise that it's a better product, but it's in a lot of cases feels like the products are less simple, less. This is what you get. It's less of a box solution, and rather see how many things you can plug in and bells and whistles, and you're not really sure whether you're actually getting any new value.
I think product houses are trying to look at lifestyle. They look at lifestyle benefits, and they're trying to compile all these different benefits into one sort of product, which will cover you for retirement and so forth. However, if you are employed, that will be in a specific house, but however, on the side, you need to still make plans and provisions for shortcomings.
What happens now? So, I mean, one of the interesting challenges, we get a lot of reader inquiries about it. You're being forced to sit on a certain company medical aid. Do you think people are prejudiced in the case of, if you've got a corporate that says this is the medical aid you will be on our scheme? I mean, what's the solution there? I mean, Thoughts on it?
I think in the past it used to work like that. However, corporate companies are now adapting to the employers' needs, and they're giving them maybe one or two options to choose from. And giving them an option, it sort of opens up the debate to say, okay, I like this medical aid. If I don't like this medical, I'll move to the next one. And there is more options available nowadays.